Good morning, Rep. Pendarvis. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty well, and yourself?
Great, man. Thanks for asking. Thank you for taking the time to join me this morning. You recently embarked on the Dream to Reality tour, dealing with the rental crisis or the eviction crisis in South Carolina. Can you tell me a little bit about what made you develop this tour and what are some of the things you're going to be doing?
Yes, you are. Michael, thank you for having me. A big fan of what you're doing with Minority Eye. It's certainly a service that provides valuable insight to what's happening in South Carolina. So thank you for allowing me to be part of it. The Dream to Reality Tour really was born out of eviction crisis that had been long in the making before the
Mhm.
pandemic, but the
Right.
pandemic really pulled the band-aid off of what's been going on and made it to where everyone can see that this is a real issue that we've not been dealing with. And so I've been in the House of Representatives for the last 3 years. And since I've been in office, I've been working on eviction issues because it came out in the Princeton report that South Carolina boasted two cities in the top 10 in the entire country for eviction rates.
Well, let me ask you about that because I want to be sure that the viewers understand. Now it was the South Carolina Bar Association was quoted that saying South Carolina it leads the nation in evictions. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Wow.
That is right. So South Carolina, as of 2016, that when
Uh-huh.
they that data, um, it had the highest eviction rate. Well, North Charleston had the highest eviction rate. North Charleston's in my district. I was born and raised in North Charleston, and then
Wow.
Columbia was not too far behind in number 8. And then in addition to that, we've got about 40 rural towns across South Carolina that are in the top 100 for eviction rates for towns of their size. So when you look at South Carolina and you look at the eviction crisis that's really been grappling the entire country, then you look at we've got a problem and we need to do something about it. It's something that I had anticipated long before the pandemic, which is
Mhm.
why I was introducing legislation to deal with evictions, why I wanted to do something about the South Carolina Landlord Tenant Act because we
Right.
recognize that the legislation that's in place is extremely landlord friendly and it puts tenants in a very vulnerable situation. Many of them who have already come to vulnerable situations because of the eviction that led them to court to begin with. And as a
Mhm.
practicing attorney, I've experienced these in my profession. So we realized that there had to be something done, Michael. We needed to have a conversation about this issue because the conversation wasn't being had. The reality is, so much of us in Columbia were talking about the issue, but not enough people were hearing from the people that mattered the most, the people on the ground, meeting people where they are, talking to
Mhm.
residents who've been evicted and impacted by eviction, talking to nonprofits who've been trying to provide valuable services to prevent evictions, and also talking to local and elected and state leaders to find out pragmatic approaches to how we address this problem. So that's really the genesis of the eviction tour. That's why we saw fit to do it. And we are going to the counties across South Carolina that have been impacted the most. So there are 12 counties, and we started in Midlands because we started with Richland, Fairfield, and Chester County. We're going today. We'll be in Charleston, Georgetown, and Berkeley County.
Mhm.
So this is the start, and then we'll end our tour in the upstate and then the PD area where we'll visit counties ranging from Cherokee County and Lawrence County all the way down to Marion County and Florence County, the PD. So we're going to cover the entire state. The purpose is to have a conversation that hasn't been had before, to really understand and listen to people who've been impacted to find out what we could be doing. And I can tell you that from the first leg of the tour, when we were in Richland, Chester, and Fairfield 2 weeks ago, the reception was extremely well. People really appreciated us being there. They were more than willing to share their experiences and their thoughts from the landlord's perspective and the tenant's perspective. And I feel like we've got enough information so that when we're done with this and we kind of go back and debrief and go through the information, we'll have something that I can present to my colleagues when we get back in January and say, here's what we've learned, here's what we know, and here's my suggestion on how we can address it.
Now, the data that you collect and the stories that you hear, I'm assuming that this is what you're getting ready for is to author some type of legislation to deal with this problem.
That's part of it, yes. I recognize that everything won't be solved legislatively. I can only do but so much in Columbia. But I do believe that there is something that we could be doing in Columbia through legislation to address it. To give you an example, some of the things that came up while we were in our conversations the first week
Mhm.
is making sure that we have the ability to give a right to counsel for tenants. So we could be looking at ensuring that tenants have access to attorneys so that they're properly represented because generally many of these landlords have that kind of representation. So it's leveling the playing field so that tenants go into these eviction hearings with the proper representation and knowing that they will be able to defend themselves and potentially stay in their home, which is what ultimately many of them want. Because many of these evictions are filed for reasons that are not dealing with a lack of rent payment or anything else, but for a matter of many of these landlords not taking care of their responsibilities. And so that is a part of it. But we recognize that everything won't be done legislatively. And so there are things that I've been talking with towns and municipalities about that they could be doing on the local level that could
Okay.
be done through ordinance to be able to address this crisis.
Okay. One of the things that we definitely been hearing and getting emails about from citizens, there is a lot of emphasis put on renters and the renters' ability to pay and making sure they're not put out. But I've been hearing from a lot of small business owners who have one or two homes and they derive income. Their whole income is based on the ability of their tenants to be able to pay rent. What are we doing to address their needs? And
So, Michael, that is
Mhm.
not lost. I talked to several of my colleagues in Columbia because they expressed those same sentiments to me.
Mhm.
And the reality is that as much as this has affected tenants, this has affected landlords because if they're
Right.
not able to get their rent, many of them who are small business owners are unable to pay their mortgage, and that puts them in a precarious situation, which could affect their livelihoods. And
Yeah.
so both ends are being affected. There's no doubt about it.
Exactly.
I'll tell you what I've told so many of the people that have come to me with that problem, which is we have to ensure that there's relief for landlords and tenants. And if we are able to get the kind of relief, especially in the COVID crisis, where we have seen rounds of CARES Act money be distributed from the federal level coming down to the state.
Mhm.
And if we can do in South Carolina, put together a relief package where tenants are getting their rent paid, and that money is going directly to the landlord. And these landlords have been rest assured that their responsibility or that they will get the income that they need to take care of their liability for the mortgage payments and any other services that need to be provided. And the tenants get the satisfaction of knowing that their rent is paid and that they'll be able to be in their home. That again, it's a short-term solution, but it at least gives us an opportunity to bridge this, bridge us till we get to the point on the other side of this pandemic. Because the reality is unemployment is still. We've got people who are still being put out of their home, and this COVID crisis is still here, presenting a serious health challenge to many of our residents. And so, in the meantime, before we come up with a long-term approach, we've got to do everything that we can, keep people in their homes and ensure that landlords are able to have some stability. And the way we do that now is through relief. And I proposed in the middle of this pandemic, back when we got to the House in June, that we put some money that goes toward relief to landlords so that they're able to be good until we come up with a long-term approach. We're not trying to absolve of any tenants of their responsibility to pay rent, not when we know they have an obligation. But there are many tenants who are being evicted, who don't have the income due to no fault of their own. And we have a responsibility as good government to stand in the gap for them while not being punitive toward any landlords who we know are being impacted. So I think there's a happy medium we can arrive at. A lot of us take some relief funding, but long term, we're going to have to look at the root cause, which is why are these evictions happening? How do we, one, get many of these tenants who come from conditions where they are working these jobs that aren't paying them enough to begin with, and so we have to increase the economic standing of people. That's a longer conversation beyond the scope of what we're talking about today. But we know long term we're going to have to increase minimum wage. We're going to have to ensure that we're providing decent, affordable housing and increasing the availability of housing in many of our towns and cities across the state of South Carolina. And
Well,
yes.
okay. Well, what's happening immediately? Because right now, am I correct? There is a moratorium on evictions right now. All evictions has been halted in South Carolina.
Through
Supposedly.
CDC, that's a federal moratorium through the Center for Disease and
Okay.
Control. And
Okay.
so so that's been extended federally, and so that there is a moratorium that I believe ends at the end of the year. And
Okay.
so that prevents landlords from evicting people now. It's my
Evicting
understanding
people.
landlords are
Right.
still trying to do that based off of my conversation last week.
Right.
But the idea is that evictions don't happen. So that is correct.
Okay. Now, with that piece, okay, that's immediate relief for the renter. In
Correct.
terms of the landlords, is there been a moratorium on foreclosures? What are we doing for the people that own the property?
So that's a great point. So there was, and I can tell you that at the height of the pandemic back in May and June, there was a federal moratorium on evictions and foreclosure.
Right.
Now, the CDC moratorium extends to evictions. I'm unsure if it extends to foreclosures. I'd be surprised if it does not. I would venture to say that it does. But many of these will, if it does, it'll be to many of these mortgages that are federally backed. These FHA loans and any of those that have a federal mortgage. But any of these other companies, there might not be a potential for there to be any foreclosure prevention. But I think that's something that we need to be asking our congressmen and women to be lobbying for. I think in South Carolina we need to ask our congressional delegation to be making
Right.
those.
Yeah, you're right. And just by the little bit of information that we can gauge from citizens, this is a very scary time for a lot of people, and it's a very complicated situation on both ends. So I just like to thank you and applaud you for for having the courage to tackle this, because this situation that's going on is not easy right now. So I thank you for that, and thank you for your leadership. Are there any other your colleagues at the House that are joining you in this endeavor?
There are. There
Okay.
are. I was very fortunate to have two of my colleagues when we were on the Midlands leg of our tour, and Representative Campbell Garber and Representative Annie McDaniels of Fairfield County.
Okay.
And I will be joined by several more of my colleagues when we launch today in Georgetown, Charleston, and Berkeley County, from Spencer Wetmore, Representative J. Moore, Representative Carl Anderson, to span the three counties, and many others who will join us. So there's certainly traction. We know evictions are something that have been impacting South Carolinians before the pandemic. And so I think it's our responsibility now to find out what's causing it, how do we curb this, and how do we look at a long-term solution for our citizens in South Carolina.
Okay, now these are in-person meetings. How are you handling them in terms of making sure people stay safe?
Great point. That's something that we took into consideration. So first and foremost, these are very intimate meetings. And so we didn't want a lot of people because we didn't feel it necessary. We wanted to have an intimate, real conversation with 5 to 7, possibly 10 people.
Okay.
No more than that. We are doing it in spaces that allow for the maximum amount of social distancing. We're requiring people to wear masks. And of course, there will be hand sanitizing stations available so that people can do that. So we're taking all the precautions. Obviously, we don't want to have be part of anything that spreads this virus in
Right.
a negligent way. So we've been very cognizant of that, and I'm thankful to my team to making sure that enhanced protocols are in place to ensure the safety of everyone in participation in the events.
Okay. We definitely appreciate you for that. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, they may not be able to go to a meeting or a session. Is there a way they can contact you, or a good way to contact you to share
Yeah,
their story with you?
absolutely. They can reach me two ways. First is by email. And my email address is info@marvinpendarvis.com. That's info at Marvin, MarvinPendarvis.com. And then the second, you can call my office at area code 843-225-2520. That's 843-225-2520.
Okay, thank you, Rep. Pendarvis. Before I let you go, what's the schedule for the rest of the sessions that's left on the tour?
Yes, so as I said today, we'll be in Georgetown, Charleston, and Berkeley County today. And then 2 weeks from now, on the 15th, we will be in the upstate for our leg of the tour. And then in 2 weeks from then, we'll end it all in the PD. So we're excited about it. We look forward to it. Anyone who can follow me on my social media and email will be able to see what we're doing and get more information on that as well, in addition to going to my website.
After you conclude the tour?
I'm sorry, repeat that question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just closing. I was just saying I thank you for your leadership on this issue, and I look forward to having you back on the show after you conclude the tour.
Brother, I thank you for just providing this service, Michael. This is
Okay.
it's an honor. It's always a pleasure. You know, you and I've had some conversations in Columbia about the many of issues that face the
Right.
city of North Carolina. And I look forward to continuing the work that we're doing down here. You keep doing the work that you're doing, and I certainly look forward to the opportunity for us to have another conversation, not only once we're done with this tour, but as we get ready for 2021 and we gear up for another legislative session. We get back on pace to address the issues that affect so many South Carolinians.
All right. Thank you for joining us today.
Take care and have a good day.